Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education. And do we have someone to lead the pledge? Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and start off with some recognitions if we could.
Please.
Mr. Bynes could come on up here. And Luke, correct? Yep. Brother Eli couldn't be with us. He's tending to fair business, I believe. But Mr. Bynes and his family, I think they saw a need in the floods throughout West Virginia, and a lot of the damage happened to our schools. Not our schools here, but throughout the state. Mr. Bynes is an athletic director at Wildwood, and they did a great job of spearheading an effort throughout the county to get unused equipment that we could send to, I guess specifically
Elkview
Middle School. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about it, okay?
The SSAC put out a call for equipment after the floods. We had some extra equipment at Wildwood. I responded and told them that we had stuff available. It took a while to get back to us, and what was going on was they were taking the donations from USA Football and some Marshall and WVU, and if anybody needs size 13 to 22 cleats, they have a lot of them. But Marshall and WVU, Zod Sports Shop, a lot of businesses donated a lot, and but a lot of them really only worked with high schools, and once it all filtered down, Elkview Middle still needed some things. Charlestown Middle actually donated some helmets as well. We picked them up, they helped me load it up, and we met the athletic director in Morgantown, and they helped me unload, and we drove back. So just something that was, somebody had a need, and we had some extra things, so we offered it, and they took advantage, and that's really all there was to it.
One of those great things that just the consideration, take the time and effort to help somebody out.
That's right. Good job.
Nick, you want to talk? No?
You play football?
No. I'm going to.
You heard Dad say yes, because you will be playing, I guarantee you. Thank you very much, Dad.
To stand
Thank
behind
you.
the board. I'll grab a picture. Okay.
Yeah.
You got it? Okay. All right, we ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Another recommendation, if I could ask Mr. Dennis Fry to come on up for us, and he's going to some of his cohorts up here in a second. Dennis Fry is the chief historian of Harpers Ferry National Park, and initiated a really exciting program here, and see if you can.
Well, I'd like my team to come forward, and yes, Kathy, you have to come forward. So.
These are our teachers, and when we are retired teachers, are teachers of Jefferson County.
Nikki and Candy and Kathy and Sam, could you come up and join me, please?
Except this side, I don't have a green shirt on. So
Just a bunch of green people.
The message. Green shirts.
Here's some. Kathy, come on up here, Kathy, Miss Bash. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, good evening. Superintendent Dr. Gibson, good evening. We are very, very excited about being here with you this evening. First of all the teachers that you see with me worked this summer at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park.
under a special grant that we were able to receive from the federal government. And they worked in a program called TIPS, which stands for Teachers in the Parks. And the idea with TIPS is that not only do they teach rangers how to be good teachers using the national park as a classroom, but hopefully some of our rangers are able to give them good tips that they can bring back into their classrooms here in Jefferson County. So it goes both ways. As I said before Dr. Gibson in a recent meeting, it was a good symbiotic relationship between the Jefferson County schools and the national park. While there, they had a chance to work with almost 7,000 students that came into our park this summer. Yes, we are a summer school, a big one, and we have leaders from all over the United States that came in to visit us that are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And so these were some of our teachers who helped participate in teaching those leaders. We had 48 states represented by those leaders, those young leaders coming in to visit with us. The other thing they did, though, is they participated in a novel program which we've named Time Trekker. Time Trekker is a game that's going to be played in the national park, an app. And in fact, we actually have the owner and the CEO of the company that is partnering with us on the development of Time Trekker here this evening from Charlottesville, Virginia. Avery Chenoweth, who is the founder of Here's My Story, and his CEO, Dominic Sinibaldi. Both of them came up from Charlottesville. They've been in the national park working all day today, developing GPS coordinates for the game that we're developing. But our teachers that you see here actually helped produce the curriculum, helped evaluate and assess the screenplay, the stories that we were developing, helped us come up with some of the stories that we wanted to share based on their experience working in the national park this summer. And so this is really groundbreaking. There's not another national park in the United States that's doing something like this. This is designed primarily for 4th graders and 5th graders. It'll be somewhat like Pokemon Go, except we're not chasing monsters. We will be working in collaborative teams of 4 and 5 students with chaperones and teachers. They will have electronic devices, and they will learn all kinds of things, not only about history in the national park, but how to work together as a team. And so we're very excited about all that this team has brought to us. I'm very proud to announce that I found additional funding, which will allow me to keep them on even beyond their contract period, which was up through August. And they will continue to be available to assist us in the evaluation and development of the game as we move forward. The game is scheduled for launch on April the 1st, but we've worked with Dr. Gibson to actually beta test the game using Jefferson County students and teachers from 4th and 5th grade classes here. And the National Park will be paying for all the bus transportation to bring those 4th and 5th grade classes into the National Park to do that testing. And we're going to be testing in October this year. And so I think the Jefferson County school system can be very proud that it's part of this, what I hope will be a revolutionary way of visiting national parks for families, for students, for teachers, for groups of young people that will be able to come in and explore and discover and have an entertaining time, but also a learning time. I want to finish with this. Dr. Gibson made a presentation to the new teachers at the New Clarion about a week and a half ago. She asked the audience if any of them have heard of a Lebanese-American poet and philosopher named Gahil Gibran. Some hands went up, mine did. And she used some of her favorite quotes. I have some of my own favorite quotes that I think are apropos this evening. And one of those for me that I've had by my side for a long time is that work is love made visual. Work is love made visual. And I will say that each one of you, each one of these teachers certainly practiced that philosophy to the T, to the letter, to everything that the philosopher and poet meant, that work is love made visual. Each one of these people exemplified that this summer here at Harvest Ferry National Park. And every student they met every person they met by the thousands. So I want to thank each one of you for not only working for us, but expressing what your love is, your passion is in such a visible way. And then finally, with Time Trekker is going to be a mind game. It's not going to be a game that is just Pokemon Go. It's going to be a game where people are going to have to think and people are going to have to make decisions, and the decisions will have consequences. Finally, I'll give you one example. We had an African American historically in Harpers Ferry whose name was Joseph Blanham. We will call him Joe in the game. Joe is a ferry boat operator across the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers, and Joe carries cargo and people back and forth across the Potomac and Shenandoah. But Joe also is involved in an illegal activity, smuggling. And specifically, he is smuggling human beings in what's known as the Underground Railroad, taking people that are enslaved here in Jefferson County and trying to help them get to freedom across the Potomac River and heading north into Pennsylvania. If he gets caught, he's in trouble, big trouble. He learns that a cargo, as that was referred to, of 10 people is coming to Harpers Ferry to escape. He's ready to meet them and take them across, as he's done numerous times with others. But then he's tipped off, and he learns that the authorities know that the cargo will be arriving, and the authorities will be there to wait for them. This is all part of the game. This will be introduced to the 4th and 5th graders. They'll be learning not only history that actually happened in Harpers Ferry, but the concepts of slavery and freedom, and ultimately decision making. Here are your decisions. If you're Joe, do you ignore the cargo? You don't stop by to pick them up? Which means those 10 people that are runaways, that are trying to escape and gain freedom, they will not succeed because of your decision not to meet them that night. You will save yourself. On the other hand, another decision for you is this. Joe could proceed, pick them up, take them across the river. Joe returns, and the authorities nab him, and his life is now in jeopardy. Which decision will you make? And the team of 4 or 5 has to make the decision collectively. The consequences are obvious based on which decision you make, and points earned or lost in this game are lives saved. You get points for lives you save, and you will have points detracted when lives are lost. So the decision actually is based on life. So I'll finish with another quote by Khalil Gibran, which is this: perplexity is how all knowledge is discovered. These kids will be engaged in great perplexity. So I really appreciate the input of these great teachers. I think they represent the wonderful teachers that you have here in Jefferson County that I get to work with in the national park so much. And I feel that we are blessed to have such a strong educational community with great, strong leadership and wonderful support from the board in a partnership between a national park, which very few communities have, and Jefferson County. So thank you for allowing me to be able to share your great resources with these teachers this summer.
Go ahead and sit with these teachers. This is Nikki Coons from Bright Denny.
Yep.
And Samuel Bello from Shepherdstown Elementary. Miss Candy Kane from Ransom Elementary for retired now.
Emeritus.
Kathy Milner, currently at Ransom Elementary.
Thank you.
And of course, Mr. Fry, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate all
Thank
what
you
you've
very
done
much.
for us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have it. Thank you, Avery and Dominic, for making a special effort to come in this evening and show that this is real. Thank you.
Go around the board and get a picture taken there, okay? Thank you.
All right, I'm thinking maybe you guys scoot down a little bit more. Mr. Cable, I might have you move your chair again. I'm sorry.
You guys want to come up also? Yes. Teachers say yes.
Come on in.
You could do that in this area, though. You know, you're not gonna have to white area. But there's no way that they ever let you go to games.
All right. I just get you to move down toward the flag just a little bit, and then everybody kind of follow suit. Yeah, stop right there. That's perfect. All right. That looks good. Okay, I think we're ready. Ready, guys?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thanks for moving
Madam Superintendent, comments?
Yes, ma'am. Just a few. We got off to, as most folks know, we've actually opened school since our last meeting. We got off to a great start on Thursday, and I would just like to thank all of the 1,200 employees of Jefferson County Schools, teachers, aides, cooks, bus drivers, maintenance folks. Everyone worked very, very hard to get our schools open on time, for them to be clean and ready and welcoming for everyone. We had several great open houses. I managed to get to a few of them, and managed to actually get everyone to school and back safely. We haven't lost one, and it looks like we're up by, at least first day count, at least 60 kids, possibly more. We won't know until we have our official, second month count. But a job well done to our staff. We also will be releasing on Friday to the media the test scores and statistics that we gave to our staff at convocation that showed while our population has been growing, we've been growing by nearly 1% a year over the last several years, and the fact that it's been a needier population, higher poverty rates, higher rates of special education students, higher rates of ESL students, we've managed to continue to improve both our performance in academics, our graduation rate, lower our discipline rate, and we also have some more positive news that will be embargoed until Thursday, but our ACT college scores are out, and we're actually quite proud of those as well. So kudos to our staff for a job very, very well done.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Sudduth. Glad you could join us.
Well, I tell you, I sure enjoyed listening to some of our middle school bands tonight at the fair. And it was great to see packed house of parents. And Mrs. Skinner, thank you. And there'll be another board member coming shortly.
Yes, sir.
I saw her in the stands as well. I'm sorry, so we're at approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, revisions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, thank you. Citizens' comments? Thank you, Mrs. Skinner. We have 2 signed up this evening, is that correct? Okay. Ms. Williams-Grant?
Yeah, hi
How are
everybody.
you?
First of all, good evening everybody, to the board members, president, and to the superintendent. My name is Selena Williams-Grant. I reside at Jefferson High School for 34 years. I'm in my anniversary year. Yes, in there. My topic is JHS, the new dean position requested by Principal Sherry Ross of Dean of Students. My point that I would like to make is the school Jefferson High already has 4 leaders. We have a principal and 3 assistant principals. Why was this dean of student position or request to the board not communicated to the people or the teachers at Jefferson High School? We had our first faculty senate meeting, and that's what it was created for by the state of West Virginia, that we would meet and communicate. And that was on Wednesday, 8/17, to our first meeting. Then I have why, in other words, I have copies, which I've given each one of you, of the responsibility, because you need to know the responsibility of a dean for a high school or a dean for a middle school. So I have researched and given you some examples of all those responsibilities, as well as salaries that can be given, as well as their important roles that they play. Now, I'm here because the teachers are very upset in the form of, they rather have 2 positions in place, which is the math and the Spanish. If you look right down and you see on the board minutes, you all have said those 2 positions are unposted, meaning unfilled. Yet if you go on the post and someone wanted that job, why it's not there? Because if ever you're saying something, it needs to be out there so that people can see. No matter how long it takes, the classrooms are overcrowded. We have 1,607 students. And I prefer, not just me by myself, they would like to have those 2 positions still exist. In other words, because I don't need no 3 minutes, because that's what I gave you if you look at the bottom. They want you to consider having those 2 positions stay in place and get some hires than to take one and get, because even though it might be a dean of students, it is still a leadership position, which if you look at all those responsibilities, what are our leaders doing now to add another one? What would they be doing as well? I have been in the system for a very long time, and my first master is leadership, organizational structure. I look at everything, because I've been here many times for you all, and I put in place. My mind is so fast, and it tells you what I see. I've been giving it away for free. I believe in structure. I believe in the kids getting to the next level, which they want. We want those tests to be up in math. But where would that other leader just being there looking at those responsibilities get Jefferson to that level? We had a silver. I'm quite sure you're aware of, I have been through 12 leaders. 12. And I don't care who comes to that school. I always have ideas, whether they take them or not. But I've been here for the whole county. When you all use what I came for, the mid-progress report. Ms. Williams Grant brought that to the board. And that's for the whole county, because I got tired of seeing these things. Whenever I get tired of seeing something, I gave it. Even the proposals. I just want to see that 1,000, I don't know what y'all going to do in the future, because some of those students also need to have some type of transfer to Washington, transition, because it's kind of too much that everybody wants to come to Jefferson. But at the same time, we still need to take in consideration. That's 3 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm good. Yeah, look, I'm good.
You're very good, and
Yes,
we always
I am.
appreciate hearing from you.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you for being here. Thank you.
Ms. Joy.
I'm a half-time math teacher at Jefferson High, and the classes that every math teacher I've talked to, the classes are overflowing. At the end of the day, the teacher that shares my room, she has 32. We don't have enough desks in my room. I mean, the kids are just crammed in like sardines. And every math teacher I talk to, I've gone to everybody asking for desks, because we need 5 in my room. So we have too many kids and not enough teachers, especially math. Like the class that I teach, the kids are the most needy, and they could really use a second math teacher just for the help, because they don't have the basic skills. So I'm acting as if I'm a special ed teacher, but the job is just a regular math teacher. So these are, it's a high need population, but the classes are 25 to 28 that I have. The other thing is, it says unfilled, so I don't know what that means, because I haven't seen a part-time math position posted, at least not since spring. There were 2 full-time math positions, and I applied for those. I keep applying, and I don't, it goes nowhere. So there are highly qualified math teachers that are willing to teach. I could teach 2 part-times, or it could be turned into a full-time. But there's definitely a need for a half-time math teacher. There's a need for a full-time math teacher. There's a need for more Spanish teachers. The Spanish teacher, I talked to her, she said that she was told that the reason they're taking the position is because they don't want a lot of subs coming in, but they're telling the kids to just take French instead. They won't let them sign up for Spanish. But yes, they definitely have a need for a Spanish teacher. So I don't know what this means, but I'm definitely qualified, willing to teach the other half-time position if it was ever posted, because I checked and nobody could find it in Human Resources that it's been posted since at least the spring. I think that's everything.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's very important for us to hear from teachers at all of our schools, and particularly Jefferson right now. So thank you. Consent agenda?
Yes, so there's one edit under number 16, under the superintendent approvals. You'll note that originally this was an appointment as a long-term sub. We deleted the notice of long-term sub because we received, after this was posted, we received notification from the State Board of Education that they had approved the certification to fill the position not as a long-term sub but as a permanent. So that was actually a big positive for us. Rather than a long-term sub position, it's actually a permanent fill on a special education position, which is a hard-to-staff area for us.
Any other? That's it?
No, sir, not on the consent agenda.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Unfinished business?
None, sir.
None? Then we'll turn to new business.
Yes, so the first item that we have on the agenda is Ms. Sherry Ross, the principal at Jefferson High School, and working with her leadership team, is requesting approval from the board for a reduction in force of a .5 Spanish and a .5 mathematics position, both at Jefferson High School, which are unfilled, for approval of a dean of students position. In discussion with Ms. Ross, so she can certainly expound upon that if she wants to get up. Partly this was precipitated by our work in 2 arenas. Number one, as we conveyed to the board and as we've shared with our principals, our rubric of need, where we've begun a statistical analysis of a number of different fields of how needy a school is, what levels of discipline they have, special education students, low SES, and a number of different fields, how relatively needy a school. And Jefferson High School came in second in the county on that list. In addition to that, Jefferson High, as has been noted, is also a school that has a significantly larger number of students than Washington High School, despite being similarly staffed. Our greatest area of concern was in our school counseling department, where the number of students per counselor at Jefferson High School was over 400. Last time I looked, it was 408 per counselor, while at Washington High School it was 286 per counselor. And given the additional high needs of the students at Jefferson, there was a belief that there were additional services that should be rendered to them, and this was the leadership's concept of how that might be accomplished without additional expenditure on the part of the school system. So
Ms. Ross?
Thank you. We have the halftime Spanish and halftime mathematics position. The halftime Spanish position remained unfilled throughout the duration of last academic year. We went through a number of long-term substitutes and ultimately had to dissolve the classes. The positions remain posted over the course of the summer. We have still not been successful in filling that position. And so we have made some adjustments in terms of the students' schedule requests. Some shifted to French, others will be postponed and held off to take Spanish at another time. The half math position, we had requested at the for this school year to increase the halftime position that we had to full-time and then add a full-time position. Once we ran the numbers and did the projections and ran the master schedule, we found that we did not need the half position, and we have room in order to grow. We're still in the process of equalizing our class enrollment at this time. As Dr. Gibson referenced, we are a school that has demonstrated a high level of need. One of the things that continues to recur as a theme are what options and opportunities we have for students to provide interventions and supports for them. For students in the discipline situations, sometimes we have limited resources available for them. So we want to be able to expand on those interventions and supports for our students, and in talking with the leadership team, with the other administrators, the Dean of Students was our concept for being able to address that. That person would be able to still be on a 200-day contract, still fall into the teacher's salary, so we would not be adding to the expenditure for the position. That person would be able to support our at-risk students and would be kind of an integral part of both the counseling services as well as the administrative team, and working across all of those venues to work in the development of those intervention strategies, supports, positive reinforcements as well, supporting some discipline pieces, but really working to support the SAT process, the student assistance team process, as well as, again, working with counselors, identifying those at-risk students and helping to provide some intervention services for them as well. So it's a multifaceted position. Envision this person being able to go into classrooms, do some observations, understand classroom management to help teacher development as well in those areas.
Thank you. Let's, so we should take these one at a time in case there are questions.
Yes.
So the first item would be approval for the reduction in force for half Spanish and half mathematics. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Questions?
What's our approximate population in our math classes at this time?
In the math classes, we have our target for the classes is 27, depending on the classroom size itself. We're still in the process of doing schedule changes and enrollments. There are some classes that are at 30. There are some that are 24 to 27. So we don't have the final say on that, but we're still averaging around 27 for the math classes.
And did I understand correctly that you said there are students that want to take Spanish, but we can't accommodate them?
That's correct.
Is that mostly Spanish 1, or are those the more advanced Spanish classes?
Mostly Spanish 1 students.
And what do we think has been the challenge in recruiting someone for that? Is it because it's a halftime position? Or?
Yes. Yes, the person that we interviewed and selected for this summer that we thought we had on the hook then wound up turning down the position to take a full-time position in Berkeley.
And we didn't have the demand for a full-time?
No.
And then I was I'm not sure I understood your comments on mathematics. Did you added a position, but
Yes.
you thought you envisioned adding 1.5?
Yes, sir.
But you only added 1?
That is correct.
Okay. Other questions?
Is there a plan for these students that want to get Spanish? I mean, I just want to make sure that they're not, like a junior that's trying to sign up for Spanish 1 and they're not going to meet the graduation requirements because they won't be able to take Spanish 2 next year. Has that been...
Yeah, the priorities are working from the upperclassmen down in terms of priorities. So again, with the freshmen, it's mostly been freshmen that have been turned away from Spanish.
So the upperclassmen are getting the classes if they're requesting it?
Yes, sir.
Do we have multiple classes of like Spanish 4, 3, and 2? Or is it just one of each?
We have multiple classes of Spanish 2 and 3. I believe there's only one section. There's only a demand for one section of Spanish 4.
Because I know at Washington there are some students that are doing an online French class for the ones, obviously it would not be ideal for Spanish 1 because you need to get some sort of foundation in there. So I don't know if there's a way to shift things around a little bit, if that Spanish 3 class is, 5 kids or if it's 25 kids, or...
We're not running any sections under 12 at this point, and I don't have the exact class sizes for those classes, but we're not running any under enrolled classes.
Is it possible to combine Spanish classes? I'm not trying to cause scheduling problems.
I think you're raising some good points. Have we looked at whether online could be a gap fill or combining classes?
Like if you have 12 kids taking Spanish 3 and 12 kids taking Spanish 2, is it possible to combine those into a classroom, back to the days where they had a schoolhouse where you had, K through 8, have a Spanish 2 and a Spanish 3 in the same room. And like I said, I'm not trying to, I know schedules are done and everything, but I just hate to not give the basics to kids that need it. And obviously this is a basic that they need to graduate.
Understood. And again, we're not running any classes that are under enrolled. We certainly do have those options of the online classes. I'll be honest, and the hope is that with looking forward to redistricting, there'll be some relief in our population. And so
it just
rather
doesn't
than
help the kids today, though.
Yeah. What about this year?
So certainly, if we were to do an online course, those students would still need supervision from someone who understood the language. It's not so much the medium of delivery, it's having a staff person who's competent in that. To your point, we could look at whether or not we could combine some of the upper level classes where those students have more of a foundation into one and free up a period. So what numbers of students are we talking about for Spanish 1? Among the freshmen, we can look at whether or not we could free up. If we freed up one class, could we, if there's 30 kids on a wait list, could we do a class of 20 or 25?
Right. And this isn't something that needs to be resolved right this moment, but something that needs to be addressed pretty quickly as the days march on here.
So is that something you can look at?
Oh, yes, sir. That's exactly what, whether or not we can combine a Spanish 2 and 3. And once again, if you've got, 17 in Spanish 2 and 20 in Spanish 3, then that's not going to work. But without having the numbers in front of me, I can't say. But that's certainly something that we could explore. And even the online course, that's just for the upperclassmen, we certainly couldn't do that for the lower ones. I would have a really hard time doing that for Spanish 1.
Right, that's why I'm saying Spanish 1, it's not ideal, but...
And certainly part of that is as long as we're making sure folks have some flexibility within their schedule. I would be more concerned if we had sophomores, juniors, seniors, that we weren't getting into a foreign language track. But the fact that you want to start it when you're a freshman and you have to wait and start it when you're a sophomore doesn't take you off of a college track. It doesn't somehow impede your progress. It's inconvenient and makes you flip some, but quite frankly, we're having to make some choices of inconvenience with our budget. So, but certainly we can explore the 2 and 3 and come back to the board at the next school board meeting with those numbers and what we were able to achieve. Certainly, I can do that.
Okay. Any further questions on the motion regarding the Spanish and math halftime positions? If not, the vote is all those in favor of approving the recommended reduction in force, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. The vote was 3-1, Mrs. Harner. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the Dean of Students position, which we've received an overview on, but if we get a motion. And a second.
Second.
Thank you. Questions?
I don't like the line in the preferred qualifications, master's degree and endorsement and supervision administration preferred. It shouldn't be preferred. I mean, if we're gonna help out supervising and working with as an administrator, they should have an administrative license. And it shouldn't be in there as preferred.
I think part of the discussion with and correct me if I'm wrong, was that their primary consideration isn't to have someone who can supervise other staff. There's no portion of that job where that person will be supervising other staff members within the school. The preference was the primary work is to be with students. It's to take some of the chronic high-level needs, students having a discipline problem. They send them into the school counselor. The school counselor recognizes that the reason that you've been targeted 4 times in the last 2 weeks is because there's no electricity at your house. So then they sit down and they start calling around trying to find a place that will give money to your family to help pay the bills. And, they've eaten up half of their day doing that. And then we have grades and transcripts and a whole host, scholarships and a whole host of other things that don't get done. So the administration, the primary focus is to have someone that works with kids, and what they didn't want to do is, let's say we get someone who's a licensed clinical social worker, someone who is a outstanding school counselor who wants to do that work but doesn't want to supervise people so they don't have an administrative license, since that's not their primary function. If they do have one, is it nice to have that? Is that a bonus? Yes, but the thought was, since that's not the primary focus, we didn't want to narrow the pool to folks who wanted to use this as a stepping stone to get into school administration, because that wasn't its intent. But certainly, to your point, it makes them less flexible for us to use them. We simply didn't want to narrow it so much that we ruled out a group of people who would do a great job working with kids, but weren't interested in administration.
Oh, and I have a problem with this position starting out as this, and in 2 years or 3 years from now, it is a person that's working as an administrator and working with not the intent of the job originally.
Right. So then if we make it where you don't have an administrative license to do it, that would prevent that. And certainly if there are edits or restrictions that the board wants to put in place, then certainly that's the point of having the discussion, is for us to talk through it. It's a fluid process.
And you mentioned the student to counselor ratio. Would you, and it's obviously dramatically out of balance, would you envision this person actually performing some of those responsibilities?
Not the transcript responsibilities, not some of the grading credit responsibilities, more of the, quite frankly, the social, domestic support service responsibilities that the school counselors, particularly at Jefferson, are trying to take on. There is a marked difference in the demographic at Jefferson and at Washington. They're separated by several degrees on our rubric of need. There's a big difference in socioeconomic levels, big difference in level of students with special needs, big difference in ESL. So the students at Jefferson, even if there were exactly the same number of students in both of these high schools, Jefferson students need more support. Just demographically, they are a student body that, because of a whole host of other issues in their lives, need additional support to be successful. Yet, we have for a long history staffed them exactly the same, as if their needs are the same. So now not only are their needs vastly different, their needs are vastly different, Jefferson and Washington, and then Jefferson has 400 plus more students. So the purpose of this was to have someone who could take on some of those challenges of working on those at-risk factors. What is it that's keeping you from being successful? Why are you, this is last year you had a great record, and this year you've gotten, kicked out of this class 4 times. What's going on? Well, my mother has a substance abuse issue, and she hasn't been home in 2 weeks, and my brothers and sisters are hungry, and I have no idea how to do this without social services coming and taking them away. Those are the kind of very real things that happen every single day that somebody who has a stack of transcripts and grades and move-in and reports and all of these things, that those things have to get done and checked off. They're having to make decisions between, I don't do this and I help you as a human being, and then this doesn't get done, and we end up with reporting problems. We end up with graduation problems because kids' credits aren't correct. And we're trying not to force them to choose between doing both of those things, which are both necessary. And at Jefferson, that need is so much greater that we need additional staffing to do it. That's just a reality.
Other questions?
Mark, do you want to make that?
Yeah. Would you like us to amend the job description in some way?
Who does this position report directly to?
The principal.
The principal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And have you worked with this type of position before?
Yes, I have.
Further questions, comments? All right. All in favor of approving the Dean of Students position, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Gibson, a question on the, so we have item C is really a presentation, not an action item?
Correct,
But
sir.
but there are action items, well,
Within the presentation, yes, sir.
okay. I should have caught that when we were doing the agenda, but
That presentation has informational items within it, yes, sir. It's these other two, D and E.
so D and E are
out of that.
action items that really, item C is designed to give the overview and the justification for.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. As the board is aware, we have been embarked on a rather lengthy process regarding our transportation department. Last October, we asked the West Virginia Department of Education to come and give us a review of our transportation department and give us feedback on how we might make improvements in our efficiency and operations. They came back in November with a series of suggestions. We put those out to our transportation staff and asked for a timeline of implementation. And there were a number of pieces within that report that the transportation staff in Jefferson either disagreed with the conclusions of the committee who came and did the review, or wanted to see revisions to. So we met with the transportation department and asked each one of the different work groups within the transportation department, bus drivers, bus aides, substitute bus drivers, mechanics, and administration, to meet separately, and for each one of those work groups to elect someone to be a representative for them. They all did. They each voted for a representative. The representatives then met. We gave them copies of the reports. Again, we went through them and we said, talk to us about what you believe would help the transportation department function more efficiently. It's grown, just like the school system has, tremendously over the last several years. You've been hampered by an inadequate facility. Those restrictions are gone now. In an ideal world, if you can reorganize or revamp this department in a way that logistically makes sense, because we are struggling very much to produce the level of product from transportation that we would like to see. We have very high expectations of ourselves. We have great staff, but the way that we're organized and how we are conducting ourselves right now doesn't always reflect that. So the committee came back with a series of recommendations, which you've been provided in the report and which are in the agenda online. Those recommendations were around a whole series of things. I presented all of those recommendations out to the transportation department, and we posted both the recommendations and a modified job description that was a part of the recommendations online for folks to look at and review and give us feedback. So some of the recommendations that have come out of the report are things for us to change in our internal conduct and how we do business. One of the primary recommendations was for us to remove discipline from bus drivers and from the bus operations facility managers back to principals. Principals are the ones with relationships with kids, who know them, who know the discipline protocol, and the administration of the bus garage was spending a lot of time working through discipline issues with parents. And so we had a task force of principals who came up with some protocol. We've sent that back out to the bus drivers and the bus aides for them to be able to review it and give feedback, and then we'll take it back to the principals for their approval. Developing protocols for bus accidents. Who is responsible for monitoring the condition of the bus and releasing it? Who's responsible for monitoring the condition of the students and releasing them? Versatrans. We have a system that allows parents to track their child's bus online, on their phone. We already have this available in every single one of our buses, and we simply haven't turned it on for parents and given them information about how to do it. So we burn, once again, inefficiencies, an enormous amount of time of people calling the bus garage. My bus is 15 minutes late. Where's my child? I don't know where he is. And someone has to pick up the phone and go look up which bus they're on and find where that bus is at and call around. So trying to put our time and energy into being more efficient. Inputting bus numbers into Weavis. We have a school messenger program that makes robocalls. I can, in 5 minutes, inform every single parent at Drisswood Elementary School that there's been a water main break and we're going to be delayed for an hour, and thank you for their patience and understanding. We have the same capacity to do that for bus routes. If we'll put kids' bus numbers into Weavis, then I can do a robocall, 2 seconds, that says bus number 1660 is running 30 minutes late. Thank you for your patience, and we appreciate your cooperation. Once again, something that we have the capacity to use if we'll put the effort into getting the bus numbers in there in the first place, that saves us enormous time over the school year. Currently, all the county vehicles are tracked out of transportation. We removed that from their responsibility and put it up here at the central office. That's something that we could take off of their shoulders. That was time-consuming and unnecessary for them to have to do. One of the largest recommendations that came out of this committee's report was a reconfiguration of administration. Currently, there is a single coordinator of transportation who is responsible for supervising all 142 staff. It is a very, very inefficient way, and it's very frustrating for our staff who work very hard in the transportation department to be supervised by someone who can't even possibly know all of their names, much less see all 142 of them perform and write all of their evaluations effectively and efficiently and be available to them for questions and for support and for regular management. Plus to have one person who runs a program that begins at 5 in the morning and runs until 5:30 in the evening has caused a significant amount of issues for us bus drivers, whether they are late runs or early runs. If I have a problem and I call into the bus garage, I need to speak to someone who is a supervisor who can help and support me. If I have to work these hours, then I should have support during these hours. So the Transportation Committee made a number of suggestions to resolve the concerns that were proposed. So with those concerns, one of their primary concerns was splitting up supervision of the staff so that individuals could have the time and attention to their needs and their timesheets and their route concerns that they deserved. And the suggestion of the committee was to have a coordinator of transportation and 2 supervisors of transportation. The supervisors of transportation who report to the coordinator would both be service positions, 240 days a year with split schedules so that during the summer, one of them would always be present. When the bus garage is open, there would be a supervisor of transportation there. And then the coordinator and those 2 supervisor positions would split the supervision of all of the bus drivers and the bus aides so that any one person wasn't supervising more than around 40 people at a time, which is a manageable number to give people feedback, to supervise them correctly. We've gotten a number of concerns and feedback from folks who say, I do a great job, I work hard, I'm very professional. This incident has happened, people aren't getting feedback. They're not being groomed. They're not being supported in improving their craft because no one has time to go and work with them. And their schedules would also be split in that one supervisor would be there from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and one would be there from 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. so that we covered the entire transportation schedule day. There is a computer operator position that would go unchanged. That position currently, if they don't have to drive a bus 6 to 5 days a week, that position is able to do everything that we need it to in terms of routing and Versatrans within their 261-day schedule. There's a recommendation to assign to the shop foreman all of the spare buses and determination of whether the spare buses are sufficiently clean to warrant the return of the original bus. That was something that was falling on the administration, and unnecessarily the shop foreman knows what's fixed and what's not. You assign out all of the spare buses. The inventory manager would be responsible for monitoring the gas buoy system. Our gas buoy system is basically our electronic monitoring system to make sure that we're efficiently using our fuel resources and that there is no waste or theft in that. That duty is currently being performed by a secretary, but as the inventory manager covers every other piece that we need for transportation, they need to cover the gas. We would also recommend the reclassification of the chief mechanic as a coordinator of mechanic, and then that would shift all of the evaluations for mechanics to that coordinator of mechanics. Another recommendation of the committee is that just as we do with teachers, when people are learning a new position and it is one that is difficult, I quite frankly could not be paid enough love or money to get on a moving vehicle with 60 kids behind me and be responsible for their safety and their lives and their livelihood. While I'm trying to navigate traffic and back roads and snow and, all of these other things, yet after the initial training system, the only person that they have to go to is the coordinator who has 142 people answering to them, and they run the entire operation. And we were finding that they weren't getting the level of support they needed. So there is already within our policy a stipended position called a lead driver position. It already exists. It's simply something that Jefferson hasn't utilized. And it basically, just as we do with our teacher mentor positions, it is a mentoring support resource position. So if we had 4 of those and divvied up the bus drivers and aides into 4 separate groups, then no one of them would have more than 24 or 25 people. Part of the discussion was, if I'm a new driver and I pull up to a stop, and I've been driving for a couple of weeks, and there's this guy and he's been hanging around at the bus drive. I stop. I think he might be somebody's uncle, but I don't like the way that he's acting or saying things. I don't want to jeopardize my job. I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing. Who do I go to with these questions? Who do I talk to? Who mentors me through, oh my gosh, I'm dropping off these kids and this mom got on the bus and just cussed me a blue streak. And these are real life things that happen to our people every single day. And the thought was, having experienced, calm, thoughtful, who we have, bus drivers who could be the mentors and the supports for folks when they don't, it's not necessarily something for their supervisor, it's just like a teacher mentor, somebody that I can go to, where do I find this? I have this problem, done this. And then the final recommendation was, part of our struggles with managing transportation and running it to our standard is that many of the people who are paid to run transportation spend a significant portion of their day driving buses because we can't get enough substitute bus drivers. So the recommendation was for us to add 4 full-time itinerant bus operator positions, and their assigned route every day is to come in and sub wherever we tell them to. Now, in the discussion, and I thought this was very insightful on the part of the committee, it hasn't happened yet, but assuming one day the heavens open and we don't actually need 4 substitute bus drivers, then for those 4 positions, 2 of them would be itinerant bus operator / clerk aide, 1 would be itinerant bus operator / mechanic assistant, and 1 would be itinerant bus operator / custodian. So for those positions, if they did not have a substitute route to run that day, they would then fulfill the other portion of this, whether it was a custodian, mechanic assistant, or clerk aide, so that we would be certain to always be, you're not going to go and not sub that day and just, hang out and smoke cigars and call it a day. Although that sounds like a great idea.
Sign me up.
Tell me about it. So that was a really quick overview, but I would like to, we have several members of that committee who I will point out to you and both to people who might be watching or listening to this later. They gave up time during the summer. They weren't paid for this. They came in and did it on their own time. They were elected by their peers to do this, and as often happens in public service, no good deed goes unpunished. So I would like to publicly thank them. They put a tremendous amount of work into this, and they appreciated the fact that they're being trusted to control their own destinies and say, if we have problems, and we do, then you help us, and you're in the best position to help tell us how to resolve them. So if you guys could, I don't think everybody's here, but I don't see Karen Nelson, who was the bus driver representative. I do see, I don't see Miss Danielle Rinaldi, who was the bus aide. She did email me that she couldn't be here today. I see Mr. Chris Kaufman, who was the representative, if you could stand up, for the substitute bus drivers. Mr. Dave Bush, who was the representative for the mechanics, couldn't join us this evening. Mr. Sam Carper, who was the representative for the administration, is joining us as well. But those individuals spent a lot of time this summer going through job descriptions, looking at organizational charts from other school systems, going through the reports, making these recommendations. And I do deeply appreciate all the time and effort that they put in. So thank you for that.
So before we get to the action items, then let's, hi, Mrs. Ogden. I'm sure you enjoyed your concert.
I did.
Questions for either the superintendent or the committee?
So we'll have a coordinator and 2 supervisors.
Yes, sir. The coordinator would remain as it is currently with no changes. And then we currently have 1 bus supervisor. It would simply be adding another bus supervisor with split schedules, so they cover 5 a.m. to 5:30 p.m.
Now, these 2 supervisors, will they be involved in evaluation of bus drivers?
Yes, sir. They will be service positions and they will be evaluators. Thank you, that's a great point. We took this plan and the job descriptions that the committee came up with. They pulled job descriptions from like 3 or 4 other counties and the plan, and we ran them by Kathy Finsley, who is the Steptoe Johnson Human Resources attorney, and asked her for any feedback on these.
So will they have to have a certification or something of such to be able to do that?
They will have to go through training, but their position does allow them to supervise. Now, the coordinator of mechanics, that position does require a certification. Like it requires that position.
And he will have some kind of certification to evaluate other mechanics as well.
He already has that. Currently.
Same was, yeah. But what about the second?
The buses.
That's the difference. We're talking about the mechanic, not the 2 bus supervisors positions.
And there are some parts to this I really like. I can't say I'm in favor of all of it. I feel that you need to sit down with the people that are out there right now, because we have them working, 7.5-hour days. And to let them know that this is number 1 priority, this is number 2, because they're just not getting to everything.
Yes, sir.
But they don't know what's number 1 and number 2. And somebody needs to sit down with them and say, till we get all these positions filled, this is what I want you to do first, this is what I want you to do second. And if you don't get to this, I'm sure we have a lot of calls from parents about bus stops and everything that we're not getting to. Is that a priority or not a priority? And I would like for somebody, and I would really like for you, if you have time, to sit down with the people that are out there, Sam and Larry and Brenda and who else is involved, and say, this is our most important. Mm-hmm. This is our next most important, because I don't think they know. Not that they can't. Mm-hmm. It's they're just not sure what we want them to do first, second, third.
You're talking about prioritizing our current work right now?
Till we get all this filled, and probably after we get all this filled, then we need to say to those persons, here's your most important. Here. Now, because that's going to change when you have 6 people instead of 3 people. There's no way on God's green earth we're getting everything done with no overtime right now.
No. We do still have overtime, but it's...
But somebody needs to tell them the priority for things. Mm-hmm. Because right now we're kind of shooting in the dark. Sam might have a different idea what Brenda has of what the priorities are.
I can certainly do that, yes.
I think they would appreciate that, because I think then
they'll know whether they're doing what they think they should be doing.
That's right. That's a good point. We met with all of the transportation staff last week, and we went over this entire report point by point to get feedback from them and sent that out. But I haven't personally gone back and supervised the transportation staff directly to tell them what they need to do.
I'm not sure they know what the priorities are.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Transportation Committee for, I know you've put a lot of thought and work into not only these recommendations, but moving in reverse somewhat into working with the state on the audit and review, as well as moving into the new facility. So it's like you've done about 3 years' worth of work wrapped into one. But to kind of step back for a moment, my recollection is this board, as we were making the push to get us into a new facility, a facility that was certainly safer, and more up to date. We thought that this was also a time to make sure that we had the most efficient operation system going forward. Transportation currently accounts for almost 11% of our total budget, and that is obviously not an insignificant amount of funds. And so we saw this as an opportunity to look at, are we managing ourselves as efficiently and safely as possible? And so you invited the state to come in to take a look. And we have a proud tradition around here of not just taking what the state tells us to do, lock, stock, and barrel. So we thought we'd take our own look at things, which I'm glad we did. And so this is a result of that. I mean, it's my sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my sense that while I don't expect that there's agreement among 142 people or so in the transportation department, but that this is recommendations coming to us from the transportation department. Okay, well, we thank you again for the work you've put into this. I had the pleasure of having my first cup of coffee this morning at about 5:40 a.m. at the Jet Transportation Center. And, in the brief amount of time I was there, mechanics were being pulled off buses to go, pulled off working as mechanics to go work as bus drivers. We thank you for that, but we realize that that's a problem.
That's the idea of the full-time substitutes, is to alleviate mechanics as much as possible.
Sure.
And office staff. And then alleviate office staff so Sam can actually do his job, which he does a great job. I don't know how he does it, but it just alleviates them having to go out so they can get their duties finished.
Yeah.
And we have recruited heavily. We started the year off with 9 full-time subs, which is the most that we've had in quite some time. But we lose, based on the statistics that RESA 8 was able to provide us, we lose a significant portion of the people who sign on to become substitute bus drivers before they even hit the training portion. Quite frankly, the majority of them to either being unable to pass our drug screening or unwilling to meet the training requirements and the amount of time that they have to spend driving.
I was just going to ask, creating the position is one thing, but we've always had a hard time with bus drivers. Are we going to actually be able to fill the position?
Well, the hope is the fact that they are stable, long-term employment. I'm promised. This isn't I call you every once in a while to come in and fill. This is your full-time job with benefits every single day. Those are more attractive, and we have not had as big a problem filling those. We do in all honesty, have a problem getting folks to come to work every day on those. And that's, and unless anybody, always assume positive intent. Our state's system isn't set up to encourage people to not use those days, quite frankly, because our system used to allow them to turn those in towards their retirement, towards other things, and it no longer does that. So where's the incentive when you have all of these days? If you don't use them, you simply lose them. And so I don't blame the staff for taking what time they need. It's a stressful job. It's a very physically intensive job. We, as we stated before, about 26% of our total workforce has 20 or more years in Jefferson. We do not have so we have a percentage of our population that's just hard work and they need time off from the stress of that. We just don't have the pool to fill those. But when we do have full-time, we don't have full-time bus driving positions that go open, where it's just like, I can't find anybody who'll take a full-time driving position. They'll take them. And then our rates of absenteeism and not being able to find the calling sub system. So our hope is that these are 4 full-time, I guarantee you work every day, and full-time benefits will be at least, if we can, even if we have 10 openings a day, right now that's 10 that we have to fill, and if it left us only 6, there's a hope that we could keep some of the folks in the office. And the bus drivers were enormously supportive of this gesture. They're as frustrated as we are. They feel like they can't take off because they know people won't fill the routes. It's a tough job.
Yes,
it's a tough job that needs to be better compensated.
Yes.
This is totally semi-off topic, but really quick, is it possible to look at if we pay a substitute bus driver, let's just say $100 for the day, so it costs us $100 for a bus driver to take off. Is there a way to compensate? I know it can't go towards their retirement, but to pay them for whatever leave they have at the end of the year at a certain rate that's costing us less than the cost of the substitute, but still giving them extra benefit for it?
As the attendance incentive that we had previously. One of the things that we discussed as a leadership team was when we looked at the statistics from the attendance incentive previously when it was done district-wide, and there's been a lot of, let's just say, feedback about how it was done and what the parameters were and who got it and who didn't. But the reality was you saw greatly reduced substitute costs the very first year, and everything after that, they went right back up and they climbed past what they were before. So whether or not that was how things were chosen to be interpreted or implementation or whatever, the statistics showed that it wasn't effective. You didn't save the money. It was just you were giving extra money to the people who were coming anyway. If the board chose to put in place an attendance incentive for either just certain work classifications of employees, that is certainly an option, but that would require some work on our part just to work through, because there will be some there's backlash if there's any differences between compensation for folks.
It just has to be.
But it has to
be justified.
Yeah, we would have to justify it in terms of cost. Look at what our sub costs are for just that work group. And if I'd certainly rather, I don't care how we slice and dice it. It's sort of like the overtime issue that's paying for these things. I want you to get the money and I want you to get as much as you possibly can, but we need to run Jefferson efficiently. Our revenues aren't going up. They're going to do nothing but go down. So we have got to be ruthlessly efficient about how we do it. So
that's what I'm saying, if it's less than what the substitute cost
if
is.
you would like for us to bring some information to the committee about what that dollar point would be, here's how much we spend, here's how much a sub average costs us per day, and here's how many days we have on average, and here's how much, we could come up with some sort of dollar point, like for folks who don't use a certain number of their days, we can take that to committee and bring it back to the board, certainly, as a suggestion.
Before we get to the action on items D.
So can I ask a question though
Yes.
before? I only say this because In all honesty, that's going to be a ridiculous amount of work, and I'm happy to do it because I work for you, and I deeply appreciate my employment and my son's food and clothing and shelter. But do you want that information just for transportation, just for bus drivers?
Are you talking about specifically on
an attendance incentive?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to do all of that, and then I bring it to you, and you go, "Oh, we can't do that if we don't do it for the teachers, and we can't afford to do it for everybody."
I think.
Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
You can't do it if you don't do it for everybody. We'll get blown out of the saddle.
No, I
don't think there's any way to do it for one classification.
I can explore that if you want.
Here, I guess my recommendation would be, for the board to consider, would be, this is an issue that we should look at, that we should get more informed. Gary and I were certainly here when we did it before, and to maybe have a deeper overview of how programs like this can work, whether it's across the board or targeted, and to do it in the context of our budget for the next year. Given everything else that is on your plate, particularly given the recommendations here for transportation. I mean, I worry if we have the bandwidth to send you off on this over the next month as opposed to thinking about it in the context of the next budget year. But that's just my view and recommendation.
I think if there's no problem in doing it, I don't know that we need to be in a really big hurry right now because we're just getting school started and that sort of thing. But I think if it's done at this point, it ought to be done in-house as a study, not necessarily to be distributed.
Yes,
because
sir.
I think there are a lot of ramifications in this that I don't think we're prepared for yet. So.
Yes.
I think I don't have any problem with doing the study. I think it would be probably pretty enlightening, but I think it should be for the board right at this point. And I'm not trying to set anybody at anything, but I don't think we need to start a whole lot of controversy at this point.
So it sounds like the suggestion is that I explore some figures for you, for staff, for attendance, but in the context of our next round of budget, which we'll be bringing back to you in December or January, the first draft of next year's budget. And so within the context of that, bring you some, here are 3 other places in the state that are doing attendance incentives. This is what they look like within our budget. This is what it would look like for us. Where do you want me to go from here? Type thing. Does that sound reasonable?
I also think that allows the changes being made already to kind of see what kind of effect they have first. Because if you change too many things at one time, you don't really know what's working or what's not.
Thank you.
So back again, before we get to the action, but back to Mr. Osborne's question and concern about does transportation know what its priorities are? And you have here an excellent summary of the recommendations. Okay, and you have an I mean, this is a lot to be implemented, so is there a sense yet of what's first? I mean, obviously, getting parents as informed as possible about bus routes would be great, but I'm sure that is not without some input time.
We've always said, and I've always told everybody out there, when I'm there and when you're not there, it needs to be children first. So whatever affects our children and affects that day, we do first. When I've had questions from some of the other sections that we work with, some of the other departments, I've told them that we're worried about getting those kids home first, getting the kids here first. Those are the things we worry about first.
I think priority-wise, number one, we need to get to Mr. Osborne's point. We need to get additional hands out at the transportation facility to answer the phones. Part of the feedback that I've gotten is from our citizens that they call out there looking for information, and because everyone is out driving buses, no one answers the phone, and the lack of information is enormously frustrating for them. They want simply to know what's going on, or they want to at least know that you've heard their problem and you're working on it, even if you can't get them an answer right away.
And we have people driving the bus like today, and they can't drive the bus today and answer those people.
And answer the people, and that's exactly it. Is the people who can fix those issues. We are far too involved in the now. So number one, just getting people to answer the phones, whether they know anything about transportation or not. Hello, thank you for your phone call. I appreciate it. I'm sorry that you've had a difficult time. I'll take this down. But the very first priority is to get those 4 positions, because we have sub-drivers who may or may not be coming to us to fill a daily run if they have other jobs. But when we say, look, this is coming up, you either take this full-time job or you don't. Let's go.
So let's get to that, to help the transportation as quickly as possible.
That's probably the most immediate thing that we could do that would have an effect on transportation right now.
So we would entertain a motion on item D to approve 4 itinerant bus operator positions.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Item E, approval of 1 supervisor of transportation position. And, motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Just a question. So the organizational chart has 2 positions. 1 we already have.
Yeah, 1 is currently a bus supervisor position, which is slightly different under service personnel than a supervisor of transportation position. So after when we sent the report through the attorney, the 2 positions that currently exist that would be reclassified go through our internal reclassification committee first before those recommendations can come to the board. And so we've sent that information to Human Resources.
Okay, action then is votes on all those in favor of approving the 1 supervisor position, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. And the funding source for these, all 5 of these positions, is anticipated savings from the amount of overtime being paid now.
Yes, sir.
And a more efficiently running transportation operation.
We could actually fund all of these out of less than half of what we spend on overtime right now.
Yeah, okay.
And recommendations 1 through 5, those have already been implemented.
Those don't require board approval, but they are all ones in which we are working on those. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have any concerns on the part of the board, but none of those require your explicit approval. They're not positions, they're not changes in policy. They're things that either already existed or they're just changes in how we operate.
But, I mean, like, one of the things is the schools implementing the bus info. Are the schools aware of that yet? Or is that not on their radar yet?
It's been a point of discussion with the folks who train the secretaries who input the WEVIS data, because we have all of the data. It's just they haven't been putting the bus numbers into those. One of the things that we've been in discussion with Mr. Hercules is there a way for us to extract the Versatrans data into a file for WEVIS so that they don't have to put it in there?
Yeah, that would be a nice...
That would be our ideal.
I bet you there's a junior or senior at one of our high schools that could program that.
I don't know.
They
WEVIS is an ugly thing. It is. WEVIS is not the most user-friendly database. It's made just for the state of West Virginia.
You're being really nice.
And only it's for the state of West Virginia. So in an ideal world, we would extract it from Versatrans and just dump it into WEVIS, and our staff wouldn't have to touch it.
Well, and I get concerned about our schools that have 1 principal and one secretary that does finance, bus numbers now into Weavis, and and Band-Aids Kids, and 9 million other things.
And, once again, we have all of these great ideas, and part of what we discussed was, do we just bring in a sub for a week? And we sit them down in front of a computer and we give us access, and we go, you do nothing but put in these bus numbers till your eyes cross. I got 9,148 of them. Just pop them in here, go to town. Because it's just a repetitive dun, 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 putting in the numbers. Well, the problem is that we have these upfront things that would make our lives so much easier the rest of the year, but nobody has time to just do the upfront work because we're just frantically just trying to get kids
Getting
home.
supplies in, checking them off, and making sure that the bank card's right and all that.
Yeah.
The new forms are good, because I had to put them in today, and I've only been half of the 6th grade. I still have 2 other grades to do. But the parents don't know the bus numbers, so none of the forms have bus numbers on them. But even though at the top corner it says your bus number, they don't put it in.
Because they don't know it, exactly.
I don't have
Which
it.
is why we are trying to get Versatrans, because the bus drivers put them in and they know them, and it's because we have different systems that don't talk to each other. So we're working on getting, to your point, can we extract Versatrans, and if we can't, do we just take one person and we just bite the bullet and say, I'm going to bring you in sub-pay for the next 2 weeks, you're a retired secretary, and your job is just to go through hundreds and hundreds of records and put in these bus numbers.
When my son is doing something that he shouldn't be doing on the bus, so what?
You act as if you've had that experience.
Once or twice. So under this recommendation regarding discipline, what happens? What's the next step? Just so I know.
Yeah. All politics is local, isn't it, Mr. Sutter? The elementary, middle, and high school principals put together a process where the bus drivers and the bus aides would fill out a form that would then be given to the principal, and it would be the principal's decision on discipline, which is, we very much had a very good discussion with the transportation staff that said if you don't want the responsibility of having to deal with the discipline, then you don't have the right to decide what happens. So you don't get to get upset with the principal when a kid does something and the principal goes, hey, don't do that again, and puts them right back on the bus.
Yeah.
So it'll be the principal's decision about what happens.
But Mark, you and Gary would probably know in years past that the principals used to do it, and that bus was a moving classroom.
Right.
The rules stayed the same.
Sure.
You did it wrong on the bus, you got the same consequences in which you did it if you did it in a classroom. It worked back then.
Well, and you got to have good bus drivers to work
And the
with.
drivers have more access to the bus
The drivers have to
principals
be pretty consistent, and that is a staff development issue.
Well, and you also understand that these cameras have been wonderful, because
Yes.
when they say, not my little Johnny, and you say, you want to see the film?
No, it's very good to have that and say, what, you weren't out of your seat? It sure looks like you're out of your seat.
And that's been great.
Especially now we got 6 cameras on the buses.
But it's very important for the principal to have a relationship with the bus driver.
Yes.
And most of them do, I think.
There's still some part of it too, that's still going to have to go through the supervisors, because we have to compile the information to give to you. So it ain't like a bus driver's just going to come in and say, here you go.
It has to be a timely
And
manner.
I was going to say too, one of the more important things is to make that so it's not, he gets in trouble today and it's 2 weeks before we get to the
Exactly.
discipline.
Should be that same day, or
It's
that
gotta-
same run.
It's got to be a smooth process.
These simple things can go through the supervisors first. I mean, I threw a pencil at somebody, you don't need to have that. You get the paper, but I mean,
Right.
We've had drivers at my school come in and talk to Ms. Horn that morning. Okay, this little boy did blah, blah, blah. And we've been able to stop it. I can't talk for all the schools, because
I
I'm
did
sure.
that with South Jefferson, Mr. Jenkins.
It's easier to do the smaller the school, the more of the relationship you have with those people. When Jefferson High has, I don't know how many buses run in there, it makes it more difficult to have that relationship.
So the principals drafted a criteria and a form, and that is out at the bus garage for the bus drivers and the aides to review and give us feedback. Then we'll do a final. Transportation committee will approve it, and we'll take it to the principals.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you again to all of our colleagues at the Transportation Department for your work on this and your continued efforts. And I know you have early days tomorrow, so.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
I just, if later on down the road that decides that we need somebody else in there to answer phones or something like that, is that something else we can still come back with?
I think anything that we do as a system is we're a living, breathing organism. We grow and change all of the time, and so if we need something different to take place, we bring it back to the board as we always do. Now, I think we give this plan a chance to work, but if we get in there, and I've had that question, hey, could we add 3 more positions? Could we? There's a ton of work to be done. It's like, well, we've added this and we've added days, so let's see if this works. And we've added, this will be 5 service positions that we've added, so let's see if this helps. So let's work through it, and then we'll, if we need more than that.
Sam, if you have 100 spots on your answer machine on your phone, let's say, we'll give you 200, okay?
There you go. That's the issue. You need to increase the memory.
There you go. That would have been much cheaper.
My question is there possible, and I think Dr. Gibson had mentioned this, to have somebody out this week to help out a couple people to answer the phone, to put it right?
They're talking about that. They're working on that.
That would be great.
It's just finding somebody.
Yeah, because all the staff on the road, Jude and Brenda are doing the best they can.
Brenda's been on the bus
They
too.
can't answer. Yeah, Brenda's been on the bus.
I think Jude's probably hiding.
Okay,
If she isn't, I would, I'd be
all of your bus
surprised.
drivers.
We know there's an issue, and we know you can't get to everything, and that's why I've asked her to go out and say, this is what we need to do first, second, and third.
Thank you all again. Next item, an MOU with the Jefferson County Parks and Recreation.
Yes, sir.
That is music to my ears. Not to bias the discussion or anything, but
Much like transportation, this was another one of those projects that the school board tasked me with early on, and has been a work in progress. So have met many times, and Ms. Myers is here.
Jennifer Myers.
I saw her come in.
Good to,
Ms. Jennifer Myers.
thank you for being here.
The Director of Parks and Rec. We met and had several discussions about joint use of facilities. Much of our discussion centered around both use of Jefferson County Schools facilities and use of Jefferson County Parks and Recs facilities to the mutual benefit of the taxpayers. Things like opening our playgrounds up for families during non-school hours, us jointly scheduling out field and facility usage so that we didn't have these parties who were running to Parks and Rec and running to us and trying to secure both and then canceling the one that they didn't get and sort of causing a more disruptive or chaotic or time-consuming process. So we've met a couple of times now with all of the middle and high school athletic directors.
Bet that was fun.
And I'm running out of euphemisms this evening to describe the work that we're doing.
Just smiling.
Yeah. So I am not naive to the fact that there are Jefferson County, West Virginia in general, and Jefferson County in particular has a long and storied and rich history of siloing, of this is, my group and my work and my field, and I got mad at, J.C. Tabb's daddy's daddy when he coached baseball, so I went and started my own baseball league, and I'm not putting my kids in that baseball league, and I get it. So we've been trying to work through with some sensitivity to those issues, and this MOU is quite frankly, a very, very tentative first step towards that. The things that are within here are, number one, when we go to schedule field and building uses for the fall and spring, we will simply have Parks and Rec and our athletic directors meet first to say, what joint use needs do we have? Do we have people who are trying to double book either one of us? Eventually, in an ideal world, we would love to get to a place where we sit down, have all of our athletics, all of their teams go through, book out all of them, and then we go out to private organizations and say, here's what we have left. We're not at that point because we already have a lot of obligations, long-standing obligations to certain teams. But until we start jointly scheduling and using these, it won't be entirely clear the level of shortage of field and recreational facilities that we have here in Jefferson compared to the level of need that we have. We also wrote in here that we would work jointly on utilizing our adult education services. Previously, Jefferson County Schools was providing adult education programming. And I'm not talking about GED or job finding services. I'm talking about, learn how to weave or learn how to knit or learn how to do photography, all of which is great adult enrichment, but quite frankly, not our core business. But we were paying a full-time staff person plus benefits, plus the printing cost of distributing booklets to deliver those classes. And we worked collaboratively with Jefferson County Parks and Rec, and they agreed to pick up responsibility for scheduling those. Altogether, the cost that we were expending on that annually was a little over $40,000 between salary, benefits, and printing costs. Parks and Rec agreed to pick that up within their purview for a monetary payment from us to them of $15,000 for them to undertake all of those, deliver those classes. We did write in here, one of the things that you will note is that we agreed for one another for distribution of information. Why are we printing a booklet? And then you guys are turning around and printing a booklet, and they say the same things in them, and cutting those costs. So those were pretty much just the primary foundational things. And as we work through this and we gain some more trust and people figure out if we open up our playgrounds that heinous things aren't going to happen, we may have more additional wear and tear. Do we figure out how much that costs? Parks and Rec very generously produced the signs that our insurance company asked for the playgrounds at a significantly reduced cost for us to be able to open them up. Ms. Myers has already presented this MOU to her board, and they approved it. And so we're here tonight asking for the Jefferson County School Board to approve their portion of it.
So let's get a motion on approval and open it to questions.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions, comments?
The monetary payment is 1 year only, is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir. At the end of the agreement, it states clearly that this MOU will remain in effect 1 calendar year from date of signature, at which time it will be subject to review and renewal. And even within that, if at any time we provide one another with 30 days notice, with both parties, we're able to amend it. But it is a 1 year for us to be able to renegotiate that every year.
And sitting in on those meetings, I can just say that it's not that, they're looking to make money on this. It's that they're having to absorb this cost. And Parks and Rec is kind of in the same boat we are, where they're not flush with cash either. So, that's kind of the compromise that came out, that the anticipated $30,000 cost, they would absorb half and we would absorb half.
Right.
So-
And that was, we were able to write off a little over $40,000 in salary and benefits, plus all of the printing and paper costs of doing those, in exchange for a $15,000 payment while they work through how much of that they're able to provide, what the actual cost is. So trust me, it's been of enormous benefit to this school system.
And this is something that I think is well worth looking at. I know there are a lot of counties in this area that do exactly this. And in fact, Parks and Rec in a lot of counties around here runs the whole business in the county, with the exception of the school sports. They don't schedule those or anything, but it's worked for them for years, and I don't see why it can't work for us. Take a little getting used to, but
Right.
it can work.
I also see Ms. Milborn. I believe you've been active on that board for some time as well.
Current president.
And thank you for being here. Ms. Myers, anything you'd like to add?
I think this is something that we've wanted to work with the schools for a long time, trying to have that partnership and relationship for the kids in the county, and for the citizens. So we appreciate, the effort that's being made to try to make that happen. We all know that this is, a stepping stone, and it's going to take some work to get everyone on the same page when it comes to working with, all the groups outside. But, we're hoping we can be the leadership roles in making that happen.
We definitely appreciate the fact that we've gotten this far. As you said, I've been here a long time, and we're going back a couple of superintendents when we tried to start this. So to get to this point tonight is just great for everybody in the county.
Well, yes, as this item came up on the agenda, I couldn't help but think of our colleague Alan Sturm, who was whispering in our ear for many years on this side of the dais, and then as superintendent, interim superintendent, trying to push this along.
Oh, I was going back as far as Dr. Nichols.
Yeah, well.
We had our first meetings with him.
Well, let's hope that, to Mr. Cable's point, it would, and to yours, this is a stepping stone, but let's hope it doesn't take this long to get this even further. I think it is our hope that this could be the beginning of what should be a much closer relationship, could make much greater use of taxpayer-funded facilities in this county to all of the county. I know that we have principals and administrators who are going to be concerned, as they should, but we're going to work through that because this is the right thing to do. So, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you. And
I was feeling bad that it had taken months. It took 9 months to do it.
9 years.
Ooh, okay. I am readjusting my concept of success.
No. Do not do that. We've had a good. No, we have one more. One more item, but we've had a good discussion the last two items about both inside our system and in the community, trying to look at things differently, and that's that's healthy. Whether at the end of the day, you don't necessarily change everything, but it's healthy to always question how you're operating. So, thank you. What's next?
Action on approval of a full-time itinerant one-on-one personal care aide at Wildwood Middle School for the 2016-17 school year. This requires amendment in that we had originally conveyed that this position, which is on a student's IEP and a requirement of their individualized education plan, we had a student at another school who had a significant medical condition who had a one-on-one aide, and we had been in discussion with that parent, and for medical reasons that child was no longer going to participate in the school system, and we were holding a transition meeting to help them transition to another placement so that one-on-one aid would no longer be needed there, and we would simply transfer them into this position. And we met with that family on Thursday?
Yes.
It was Thursday. And they informed us that circumstances had changed and that they now would not be moving out of the system, so that student continues to require the one-to-one. So while this one-on-one personal care aid is a legal requirement in the child's IEP, we no longer have the internal fill. This will be an additional position.
Ms. Fitzwater, anything else?
I guess let me do on a happier note for you. The little girl that was going to, I guess, not be able to come to school, literally at this meeting, as adorable as could be, sat there and out of her mouth was just like, "Where's my aid?"
Good.
And I'm like, and they talk about some stuff from her, and she's like, "Where's my aid?"
Yeah.
So super excited that she will be. Right. And this is new to her.
Oh.
She hasn't been able to come to school, so she's super excited. So luckily I'm still working with Beth Marone on my budget, so nothing's written in stone yet, so it's, I'm doing that. But, and then on the other end, for our Wildwood, staff, he's going to be able to access more classes outside of the room he's in. And that's what, giving him that, the music, the this, and all that with him, being able for him to go to gym, go to, being more part of the community and having those models that he needs, that we know research-based just is the best thing for them.
Right. Okay, we have a motion to approve the full-time itinerant.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any further questions, comments?
I just have one question. Based on the fact that there have been medical issues in the past where they've not been able to attend, if that happens, will this be written as such that then that position ends, or do we then have to continue to have this position? Say they're there for 2 months and then medically they're just not able to handle that situation.
I understand your point. We can write positions, and we do now write our special education aid positions as itinerant when possible, so that when that happens, we can place them somewhere else. Unlike other states, West Virginia, when you hire someone into a full-time position, they're yours.
Unless you riff it.
So we'd have to rip it.
Unless you rip that position, yes, sir.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
We will be having a closed session on personnel.
Do we
Yes, sir.
anticipate any action?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, so we will, pursuant to West Virginia law, entertain a motion for executive session regarding personnel matters. If there is any action taken, we will do so in public session. And before we, before we entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Okay, so moved. Second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll
Can I make a quick comment before we adjourn?
We will adjourn for 5 minutes, but we'll take comments first.
I just need to do this because it's so huge, but I just want to give whoever finally did it a huge shout out. That form that came home with the kids from school, instead, they just saved me 2 hours of my life this year because that was
We have gotten
big
more
time.
positive feedback off of that. You would
Form.
think it was Christmas for parents. I had parents stopping me at open house saying, "Thank you, God, I have 4 kids, and I used to stand there and write at the kitchen table, name, address, address." They were tickled. And that was a committee of Rob Perks, God, love that man, who put a tremendous amount of work into that. Sherry Hoff, Becky Butts was on that committee. Pat was on that committee. Who else do we have on that committee? I don't want to leave anybody out. Paul Hercules, yes. So those were all folks who just took a great deal of just time and effort. What should be on the forms? What was legally required for each piece of it? How can we get it out of Weavis in this one format with just a signature set on the bottom? And it's been very, very well received. So thank you.
Well, you figure 9,000 kids times 15 minutes per form. They just saved the county an entire night. I mean,
then they can all go to the fair.
15 minutes is being gracious too.
Well, partly it's the paper. It's the paper as well. We used 16 million sheets of paper last year as a school system, and it's no joke. It's very, very expensive. So send a good message. So great. Thank you so much for that.
Did Sherry Ross bring up the chairs? By chance when I was here asking for chairs?
No.
Oh, it was a positive thing. I just wanted to say that I got a chance to experience Cougar Hour this week, volunteering with the new change there, and it was exciting to see the kids kind of outside. And there's always going to be things they want to improve or do differently or whatever. But overall, I think it was very successful for the kids as well. And Ms. Ross, the principal there, asked if we would put on an all-points bulletin. She's going to be collecting some of the camp chairs to put in some cans outside the building doors where the kids can grab a chair, take it out, just relax instead of having to sit on the lawn. Some of the teenagers didn't, if the grass was a little bit wet, didn't want to obviously get wet, but so that way they can relax and then put their chairs back and go in the building when they want, but they're able to get some fresh air outside, enjoy. Everybody behaved really well, seemed to have a really nice time, and even though they're allowed to have their cell phones, I was amazed, but there were very few kids actually in their phone. They were actually communicating, laughing, talking, sharing what lunch should actually allow, not having to worry about the noise of being all inside. So we need to say a huge, huge thank you to our lunch staff who is working their butts off, and that as well, I think, as we kind of get some scheduling done there, will get better and better, but yeah, overall was good. But so anybody has any camp chairs they would like to donate, she asked if I would put the word out.
We put that on the website too. Yeah.
Anything else? If not, we'll take a quick break and retire to executive session.